She thought he was just another arrogant man in an expensive suit. The kind she had spent years learning to defeat without mercy. But she didn't know. The man she humiliated in front of an entire room full of elites was one of the most dangerous mafia bosses in America. And he didn't know that the woman who challenged him without fear was carrying a child and a heart that had already survived more betrayal than he could imagine. What happens when two people who no longer believe in love are forced to face it? Not gently, not safely, but in a way that threatens everything they've built to protect themselves. At 42, Monica Hayes had mastered control. Not the kind people admired from a distance, but the kind that kept her from falling apart when no one was watching. Every morning began the same way. 5 a.m. No snooze button. No hesitation. She would sit at the edge of her bed in her Chicago penthouse, one hand resting unconsciously over her stomach, the other gripping a quiet truth she had not yet fully accepted. She was going to be a mother. Alone. Again, she whispered it in her mind, not with weakness, but with resolve. You chose this. And she had. After years of waiting for the right time, the right partner, the right life, Monica realized something most people spend a lifetime avoiding. There is no perfect moment to begin living. So she stopped waiting. The IVF process had been clinical, precise, emotionally distant, exactly the way she preferred things. But pregnancy? Pregnancy was different. It was unpredictable, vulnerable, terrifying in ways she couldn't control with spreadsheets or contracts. And Monica Hayes hated anything she couldn't control. Her mornings moved with precision. Green tea. Emails before sunrise. Global calls spanning Lagos, New York, and London. As CEO of Hayes Global Logistics, her decisions moved billions of dollars and thousands of lives. Ports opened because she said so. Deals closed because she willed them to. Men twice her age listened when she spoke. But none of that power could silence the echo of one sentence that had followed her for 10 years. You're too hard to love. David's voice. Calm. Dismissive. Final. She remembered the exact moment. Standing in their kitchen. Barefoot. Still believing marriage was something you fought for. Still believing love meant staying. He had already chosen someone else. Younger. Easier. Less complicated. That was the word he used. And just like that, Monica learned something she never forgot. Love, when given to the wrong person, becomes a weapon. After the divorce, she didn't fall apart. She rebuilt. Stronger. Sharper. Untouchable. She replaced emotional risk with professional dominance. Relationships became distractions. Attachment became liability. And loneliness? Loneliness became routine. Not painful. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Like a room you learn to live in. Now, standing in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, adjusting her tailored navy suit, Monica paused. Her reflection stared back at her. Flawless. Controlled. Powerful. But her hand lingered again on her stomach. A small, almost invisible gesture. There was life there. A future she hadn't planned in the way she planned everything else. And for the first time in years, Monica Hayes felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not exactly. Something softer. Something dangerous. Hope. Across the city, in a world built on entirely different rules. Vincent Moretti did not believe in hope. At 48, Vincent had spent decades turning fear into currency. Power into protection. Silence into survival. His office overlooked Chicago's waterfront, floor-to-ceiling glass framing a city that belonged to men like him, whether they admitted it or not. To the public, he was a billionaire investor. Clean money. Clean image. Clean reputation. But beneath that surface, Vincent controlled things no official document could ever record. People disappear because he allowed it. Wars ended because he demanded it. Empires collapsed because he decided they should. And yet, he lived alone. Not because he lacked options. Because he had buried the part of himself that once believed in something more. 20 years ago, love had cost him everything. The explosion had been meant for him. But she had been the one in the car. Wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong man to love. Since then, Vincent had made one rule for himself. Never give anyone the power to be taken from you again. The ballroom shimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers. Muted conversations. Power dressed in elegance. This was where deals were made before contracts were signed. Where influence was tested. Where people like Monica Hayes thrived. She stood at the front of the room, calm and composed, presenting Hayes Global's Chicago waterfront redevelopment plan. Every word was measured. Every number precise. She owned the room. Until the doors opened. Late. Unapologetic. Vincent Moretti entered like a disruption no one dared acknowledge. Conversations shifted. Eyes followed. Power recognized power. Monica didn't stop speaking. But she noticed him. Of course she did. Men like that always expected attention. She refused to give it. When he interrupted her presentation, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Ambitious projections, Vincent said smoothly, stepping forward. But I wonder if they're grounded in reality or optimism. A few quiet chuckles. Subtle. Calculated. Monica met his gaze. Unflinching. And I wonder, she replied, her voice calm but cutting, if skepticism is insight, or just insecurity dressed as experience. Silence. Sharp. Immediate. Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting. What followed wasn't an argument. It was a dismantling. Monica broke down his assumptions. Exposed inconsistencies. Challenged his authority in a room where no one else dared to. And then she ended it with the line that would echo far beyond that night. Power without integrity is just insecurity wearing an expensive suit. The room shifted. Whispers. Shock. No one humiliated Vincent Moretti. No one. For a moment. It could have gone very differently. Anger flickered in his expression. Danger, barely restrained. But then, something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not politely. Not socially. But with genuine intrigue. Because for the first time in years, someone had looked at him and seen right through him and didn't flinch. The gala should have ended there. A sharp exchange. A bruised ego. Two powerful people walking away in opposite directions. That's how these things usually go. But Monica Hayes didn't realize something important about Vincent Moretti that night. Men like him don't walk away from intrigue. They pursue it. The next morning, Monica stepped into her office expecting routine. Schedules. Reports. Controlled outcomes. Instead, she found disruption waiting for her. Miss Hayes, her assistant said carefully, there's been a development regarding the Chicago waterfront project. Monica didn't look up immediately. There are always developments. Which one requires this tone? A pause. The land ownership structure has changed overnight. That got her attention. Within minutes, the truth unfolded. A significant portion of the redevelopment zone, critical access points, had quietly shifted under the control of a private investment group. New name. New paperwork. But the signature behind it? Vincent Moretti. Monica leaned back slowly, her expression unreadable. Not surprised. Not impressed. Just alert. So, she murmured, almost to herself, he prefers chess. Her assistant hesitated. Should we respond? Monica stood, already reaching for her jacket. Oh, we will. Their next meeting wasn't scheduled. It was inevitable. A private negotiation room overlooking the waterfront, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the very land they were now both fighting to control. Vincent was already there when Monica arrived. Of course he was. Leaning casually against the table. Perfectly composed. As if the world adjusted itself around his timing. "Miss Hayes," he greeted, his voice smooth, measured. Monica didn't sit immediately. "You move quickly," she replied. "I move effectively," Vincent corrected. A beat. Then she stepped closer, placing her folder on the table with deliberate precision. And without transparency. A faint smile touched his lips. "Transparency is a luxury," he said. "Not a strategy." That should have been enough to confirm everything she believed about him. Arrogant. Controlling. Exactly the kind of man she had built her life avoiding. And yet, there was something else. Something she couldn't immediately define. "Let's be clear," Monica said, her tone firm. "You've inserted yourself into a project that was already in motion. That doesn't give you control." Vincent studied her. Calm. Unbothered. "No," he said quietly. "It gives me influence." The tension in the room was immediate. Sharp. Electric. But not chaotic. Controlled. Like two people testing the edges of something neither fully understood yet. Their meetings became frequent after that. Not by choice. By necessity. Contracts needed renegotiation. Logistics restructured. Power rebalanced. But something subtle began to shift beneath the professional conflict. Monica noticed it first in small ways. Vincent listened. Not superficially. Not for advantage. But fully. When she spoke, he didn't interrupt. Didn't dismiss. Didn't underestimate. That alone made him different. Vincent noticed things too. The way Monica's posture stiffened slightly when discussions became aggressive. The almost imperceptible pause before she responded to personal questions. And most of all, the way her hand drifted, unconsciously, to her abdomen when stress peaked. He didn't mention it. Not yet. It was past 10 p.m. when their third major negotiation ran long. The building had mostly emptied. The city outside dimmed into quiet light and distant noise. Monica remained focused, flipping through documents, refusing to show fatigue. Vincent watched her for a moment. Then, "You should eat." She didn't look up. "I'm fine." "You're not." That made her pause. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. "I didn't realize concern was part of your business strategy." Vincent didn't react defensively. Instead, he reached for his phone, sent a quick message, then placed it back down. "It's not," he said simply. 20 minutes later, food arrived. Not extravagant. Not performative. Just thoughtful. Light. Balanced. Exactly what someone under stress might need. Monica stared at it for a moment. Suspicious. Confused. Then, "Is this supposed to impress me?" she asked. Vincent leaned back slightly. "No," he said. "It's supposed to keep you from collapsing." The words hit differently than she expected. Not flirtation. Not manipulation. Just observation. Accurate. Uncomfortable. She hesitated. Then, quietly, she ate. That moment should have meant nothing. A simple act. Food on a late night. But for Monica, it wasn't simple. It had been years since someone noticed her limits, without trying to control them. Years since care came without expectation. And for Vincent, it was the first time in a long time he had done something without calculating the outcome. "Why do you work like this?" Vincent asked later, his tone quieter now. Monica didn't answer immediately. "Like what?" "Like stopping would cost you something." She held his gaze. Measured. Careful. Then, "Because it does." Vincent nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she said. "Control," he murmured. "Survival," she corrected. Another silence. Not uncomfortable. Just real. Over the next few days, their interactions shifted. Still sharp. Still challenging. But no longer purely adversarial. There was something else now. Respect. Vincent stopped underestimating her. Monica stopped dismissing him. But neither acknowledged it. Because acknowledging it would mean something deeper was forming. And neither of them were ready for that. As Monica stepped out of one of their meetings, she paused briefly in the hallway. Her hand pressed again against her stomach. A flicker of discomfort. Gone quickly. Hidden just as fast. Vincent noticed. Of course he did. But this time, his expression shifted. Not curiosity. Not strategy. Something closer to concern. And that was the moment everything quietly changed. Because concern leads to attachment. An attachment was the one thing both of them had spent years avoiding. Before we continue, if stories about love, second chances, and healing mean something to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps these stories reach people who need them the most. Now, let's continue. Something shifted after that night. Not dramatically. Not in a way either of them could name. But it was there. Quiet. Persistent. Monica began to notice it in the pauses. The way their conversations lingered just a little longer than necessary. The way disagreements no longer felt like battles, but exchanges. And most unsettling of all, the way she started expecting him to be there. That realization alone should have been enough to make her pull back. And at first, she tried. She shortened meetings, delegated negotiations, created distance where she could. But Vincent didn't chase. He didn't push. He simply remained present. And somehow, that was harder to resist. At night, Monica found herself lying awake longer than usual. Her hand resting over her stomach. Her thoughts refusing to settle. This wasn't part of the plan. There was no plan for this. She had built her life on certainty. On control. On knowing exactly how things would unfold. But Vincent? Vincent introduced something she hadn't accounted for. Unpredictability. And worse. Emotion. You don't need this, she reminded herself. You've already proven you can do everything on your own. But another voice, quieter, more dangerous, whispered back. Maybe you don't have to anymore. She shut that thought down immediately. Because hope had cost her before. Their meetings continued. But now, they included moments that had nothing to do with business. One afternoon, during a site inspection at the waterfront, a sudden downpour forced them under temporary shelter. No assistants. No board members. Just the two of them. Monica folded her arms, watching the rain hit the steel structures. I hate delays, she said. Vincent glanced at her. You hate lack of control. She exhaled softly. Same thing. A beat passed. Then Vincent spoke again. Not always. She turned slightly. What does that mean? He looked out at the rain, his voice quieter now. Some things aren't meant to be controlled. Monica studied him. There was something in his tone. Not philosophical. Personal. Like what? She asked. Vincent hesitated. Just for a moment. Then. Loss. The word landed heavier than expected. Monica didn't respond right away. Because she understood that word too well. And in that moment, without details, without explanations, they recognized something in each other. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was small things. Subtle things. Like the morning Monica arrived at her office to find a file already prepared, one she hadn't asked for, but needed. Vincent had anticipated it. Or the evening she received a message. You've been working for 14 hours. Go home. No signature. No explanation. but she knew who it was. At first, she ignored it. Then, reluctantly, she listened. For Vincent, the shift was just as unfamiliar. He found himself paying attention in ways he hadn't in years. Not strategically. Instinctively. He noticed when her voice carried strain. When her patience thinned. When her strength wavered, just slightly, before she rebuilt it again. And without thinking, he started stepping in. Not to take over, but to support. That distinction mattered. But no connection exists in isolation. And Monica's world was beginning to notice. "You're distracted." The voice came from across her dining table. Her younger sister, Vanessa, watched her carefully. Protectively. "I'm pregnant, not distracted," Monica replied evenly. Vanessa didn't smile. "This isn't about the baby." A pause. Then, "It's about him." Monica's expression hardened slightly. "There is no him. There's a business associate." Vanessa leaned forward. "Monica, I've seen the news." That got her attention. Media speculation had begun. Photos of Monica and Vincent at meetings. Articles questioning the nature of their partnership. Whispers about influence. Power. Control. Vanessa's voice softened, but her concern didn't. "Do you even know who he really is?" Monica held her gaze. "Yes." But even as she said it, something in her hesitated. Because the truth was, she knew what Vincent showed. But she didn't know everything. And that uncertainty was dangerous. The shift came subtly. At first, a board meeting. Tension. Questions Monica wasn't expecting. Some of the land acquisitions tied to this project, one board member began carefully, are connected to entities we can't fully trace. Monica's expression remained calm. Controlled. Clarify. Another executive spoke up. "There are concerns about who we're actually dealing with." A pause. Then, with Vincent Moretti, silence settled over the room. For the first time, doubt entered Monica's mind. Not emotional. Strategic. She had built her career on precision. On knowing exactly who she was working with. And now, there were gaps. That night, Monica sat alone in her penthouse. City lights stretching endlessly beyond her windows. Her mind ran through everything. Every conversation. Every decision. Every moment with Vincent. Had she missed something? Ignored something? Allowed something personal to cloud her judgment? Her hand rested over her stomach again. This time, not unconsciously. Deliberately. You can't afford mistakes anymore. Not now. Not with a child depending on her. And yet, despite the doubt, despite the warnings, despite the risk, she didn't feel fear when she thought of Vincent. She felt conflict. Because part of her, the part she had buried years ago, trusted him. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Would you risk opening your heart again? Even if there was a chance it could break you all over again? Share your thoughts below. It didn't come from Vincent. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Honest. It came from a file. Cold. Detailed. Unforgiving. Monica sat in her office long after everyone had left. The city outside dimmed into silence. The document in front of her remained open, unread for several minutes. Because once she read it, there would be no going back. Finally, she exhaled slowly and began. Names. Shell companies. Underground transactions. Connections that stretched far beyond legitimate business. And at the center of it all, Vincent Moretti. Not just a powerful investor. Not just a strategic mind. A man with ties to organized crime. A man whose influence reached into places she had spent her entire life avoiding. Monica's chest tightened. Not in shock, but in something far worse. Recognition. All the missing pieces. All the unexplained control. All the quiet power he carried into every room. It wasn't confidence. It was dominance. And suddenly, everything made sense. The way people deferred to him. The way doors opened without explanation. The way he never asked twice. Because he didn't have to. Monica closed the file slowly. Her hand trembled, just slightly. Not from fear of him, but from something deeper. She had trusted him. The confrontation came the next day. No delay. No hesitation. Vincent walked into the private meeting room expecting another negotiation. Instead, he found Monica standing by the window. Still. Composed. Too composed. He knew immediately. You found out. She didn't turn around. Did you ever plan to tell me? Silence stretched between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. It wasn't relevant to the deal, Vincent said finally. That was the wrong answer. Monica turned slowly. Her eyes sharp. Controlled. But underneath. Hurt. It was relevant to me. Vincent held her gaze. I never lied to you. Her expression didn't change. No, she said quietly. You just chose which truths I deserved. That landed. For the first time since they met, Vincent had no immediate response. Because she wasn't wrong. This entire project, Monica continued, her voice steady but colder now, was influenced by you from the beginning. Vincent didn't deny it. I protected it. Her laugh was soft. Bitter. You controlled it. Another silence. And then, the words that mattered most. I trusted you. Vincent stepped forward slightly. Monica. No. She raised her hand, stopping him. You don't get to say my name like that. That stopped him completely. Because it wasn't anger. It was disappointment. And disappointment cuts deeper than anything else. I built my life making sure no one ever put me in a position like this again, Monica said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And somehow, she shook her head slightly. I let it happen anyway. Vincent's jaw tightened. I never meant to hurt you. That doesn't change the fact that you did. A beat. Then. Stay away from me. The words landed like finality. And from my company. Vincent didn't argue. Didn't push. Didn't demand. Because for the first time in a long time, he understood exactly what he had lost. And it wasn't business. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. No late-night messages. No unexpected support. No presents. Monica threw herself into work again. Harder than before. Longer hours. Fewer breaks. More control. But something had changed. The silence felt different now. Not familiar. Not comfortable. Empty. At night, she found herself staring at her phone. Not expecting a message, but noticing its absence. And that unsettled her more than anything else. At the same time, everything else began to unravel. Her board escalated concerns. Your association with Moretti is becoming a liability. Investors started asking questions. Media speculation intensified. And worst of all, her pregnancy complications worsened. Doctors' orders were clear. Reduce stress. Immediately. Monica almost laughed when she heard it. Stress wasn't something she reduced. It was something she managed. Controlled. Carried. But now, even her body was pushing back. Across the city, Vincent Moretti made a decision he had never made before. He chose to lose. Not in business. Not publicly. But personally. The rival faction within his organization had been watching. Waiting. Monica's project, her safety, had become leverage. So Vincent did the one thing no one expected. He dismantled part of his own empire, cut ties, exposed internal players, destroyed alliances that had taken years to build. All to eliminate the threat. All to protect someone who had just walked away from him. His closest associate didn't understand. "You're giving up control." Vincent's response was simple. "I'm choosing what matters." Weeks passed. And slowly, Monica began to learn pieces of what Vincent had done. Not from him. Never from him. From news. From reports. From quiet conversations behind closed doors. Things didn't add up. If he was everything she believed him to be, why would he risk everything? For her? That question stayed with her. Because it didn't fit the narrative she had created. And Monica Hayes didn't ignore inconsistencies. One night, standing alone in her apartment, city lights reflecting across the glass, Monica finally allowed herself to admit something she had been avoiding. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about fear. Fear that she had been wrong again. Fear that she had opened herself, just slightly, and paid the price for it. But deeper than that, there was another truth. She missed him. Not his power. Not his presence. Him. And that realization changed everything. Do you think love should always get a second chance? Or are some wounds too deep to heal? Share your thoughts below. The storm came without warning. Chicago skies had been gray all afternoon. But by nightfall, the city was swallowed whole. Thunder cracked like something breaking apart. Rain hit the glass in relentless sheets. Wind howled against Monica's penthouse windows. Violent, unyielding. Inside, Monica Hayes stood alone. One hand pressed firmly against her stomach. Breathing, uneven. Something wasn't right. At first, she told herself it was stress. Another long day. Another sleepless night. But then, pain. Sharp. Sudden. Different. Her body tensed. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. Too soon. It was too soon. She reached for her phone. Hand shaking. Tried to dial. But another wave of pain hit. Stronger this time. The phone slipped from her grasp. Clattered to the floor. Outside, the storm cut power across parts of the city. Emergency lines flooded. Help wouldn't come quickly. And for the first time in years, Monica Hayes wasn't in control. A knock at the door. Sudden. Urgent. She froze. Who could possibly? Another knock. Harder this time. Monica. Her breath stilled. She knew that voice. Vincent. For a moment, everything inside her resisted. Pride. Pain. Memory. But then, another contraction hit. And survival made the decision for her. Doors open, she managed. Vincent stepped inside. Rain-soaked. Breathing hard. Eyes immediately scanning. Assessing. Then he saw her. And everything else disappeared. What's happening? He asked, already moving toward her. She didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Then. It's early. That was all he needed to hear. Vincent didn't hesitate. Didn't question. Didn't step back. He stepped closer. Okay, he said, voice steady. Calm in a way that cut through the chaos. Look at me. She did. And for the first time since everything fell apart, there was no anger. No distance. No walls. Just two people. In a moment that mattered more than anything that came before it. I called for help, Monica said, her voice strained. They said it could take time. Vincent nodded once. Processing. Calculating. Then. We don't have time. Her eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying, he stepped closer, his voice softer now. You're not doing this alone. That word hit her. Alone. The very thing she had convinced herself she needed to be. Another contraction hit. Stronger. Her hand gripped his arm. Instinctively. And he didn't move. Didn't pull away. He stayed. Time blurred. Instructions. Breathing. Pain. Vincent moved with a focus she hadn't seen before. Not controlled power. Not calculated dominance. Something else. Something real. Present. You're doing better than you think, he told her quietly. She almost laughed through the pain. You always say that when things are worse than they look. A faint, almost invisible smile touched his lips. Only when it matters. Another wave hit. She gasped. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice didn't waver. Monica, look at me. She did. Again. And something shifted. Not strength. Not control. Trust. For the first time in years, she let someone else carry part of the weight. And that changed everything. The cry came suddenly. Sharp. Alive. Unmistakable. And then silence. Not empty. Full. Vincent exhaled slowly, almost like he had been holding his breath the entire time. Monica lay back, exhausted, tears slipping silently down her temples. Is? He nodded. She's okay. A pause. Then. So are you. He placed the baby gently in her arms. Monica looked down. And everything else faded. Power. Fear. Pain. The past. None of it mattered in that moment. Only this. And then she looked up at him. Vincent didn't speak immediately. Didn't step closer. Didn't assume anything. Because for once, he understood that this wasn't his moment to take. It was hers. Monica studied him. Really studied him. Not the reputation. Not the past. The man. You stayed, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Vincent met her gaze. I wasn't going anywhere. A beat. Then. Even when you told me to. That truth lingered between them. And Monica realized something she had spent years avoiding. Love wasn't about control. It wasn't about guarantees. It wasn't about never getting hurt. It was about choosing and being chosen. Not perfectly, not safely, but honestly. Months later, the city looked different. Or maybe they did. Monica still led her company. Still sharp. Still powerful. But no longer closed off. She had learned something she once refused to believe. Strength and vulnerability can exist in the same space. Vincent's world changed too. Not completely, but meaningfully. He stepped away from the parts of his empire that demanded darkness. Restructured what remained. Built something cleaner. Not for redemption. For her. For their child. For the life he never thought he'd have again. And slowly, carefully, they built something together. Not rushed. Not forced. Earned. Because love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it arrives through conflict. Through pain. Through everything you thought you had already survived. But if you're willing, if you're brave enough, it can still become something beautiful. Even after everything. Stories like this remind us that love doesn't end with heartbreak. Sometimes it begins there. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful love stories like this. And tell me, what would you do if love found you again? When you least expected it? Thank you for watching. And don't miss the next story waiting for you.